Good morning and welcome to the Foster Swift Sports Talk podcast. I'm your host, Dave Russell. I'm here with my two co-hosts, Charlie Sarche and Tony Delamonte. Today, we're pleased to be joined by Jeff Corrion, the president and CEO of the D-Zone, which is a premier high school recruiting platform. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you guys for having me on. Happy to be on.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. And I guess just starting out, can you just tell our listeners what the D-Zone is and how it started and where we're at today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started the D-Zone in 2010 as a little website, social media platform that promoted just the high school kids, their recruiting process. I would post scholarship offers, commitments, their highlights and whatnot. In 2017, I got a business partner, Stu Carlin. So we've grown the D-Zone since. We've covered basketball full-time alongside football, which is what we've been doing for the last 16 years, was football only. So, we're a big platform right now with our website, our social media followers. We're on 100,000 plus on Twitter, 30,000 on both of our Instagram accounts right now. So, we promote the kids right now. We have an all-encompassing website with our schedules, scores, stat leaders, and all that fun stuff. And we are hosting football and basketball events, showcases, off-season events. So, we're the full package in terms of media and providing exposure for the kids and communities.
Jeff, back in 2010, what social media platforms were you posting to? What did you start with?
Pretty much just Twitter and Facebook at that time.
Yeah, and Jeff, so I feel like I always go to the D-Zone for any updates on, the high school I went to, checking on the basketball playoffs, the football playoffs. I feel like I'll see you guys and find out, kids getting offered. When you first started, did you sort of realize or envision, you'd build it to where you are today? Or, has that kind of taken you by surprise?
It's a little bit of both. You're always shooting for as high as you can in terms of, ambition when you start something like this. So the first year it was in 2010 only covering the MAC school. So at that time it was like Eisenhower, Dakota, Anchor Bay had a Michigan State commit. So I was only covering those schools. Madison Heights had Valdez Showers, went to Florida, Urban Meyer's last signing class at Florida. So, it quickly developed into something much more. It was Southeast Michigan in 2011. The next year, there was a lot more demand. People liked seeing their scores posted. So I quickly caught on to that. And then we were kind of one of the first ones, besides scout.com, to post Division II commits. So at that time, no one was posting anything besides Grand Valley State commits and signees in 2011, 2010. And before that, that's when they had all their success. So we started posting, everyone else, Ferris, Saginaw Valley commits, offers. And, that's where I think it really kind of took off, somewhere in the 2011 to 2012 range. I can't remember exactly when it was, but that was the time where I started realizing, okay, no one's posting, who's going to Ferris State, who's going to Wayne State. And, I've just kind of ran with it from there.
Yeah, Jeff, similar to Tony, I follow the D-Zone and for football and both basketball. And what amazes me is the breadth of coverage that you have. I don't know what kind of staff you have, but it is really impressive. In fact, when we were talking about different guests, I said, I don't know, much about the D-Zone or, who started that, but we need to find out and get that person on because they provide the best coverage in the state of Michigan. And so, what does that look like as far as the staff goes, and how are you able to do that?
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. But it's a pretty short staff we have. This is my full-time gig, so it's me, working somewhere around 100 hours during the seasons and, just south of that in the off season, like right now, getting all the content up from our events we had in June and July, preparing for the season. And then there's my business partner, Stu Carlin. He does a lot of work during the season and off season preparing our events. And then we have a couple other guys like Carl Bowes, really our, popular guy right now with interviews. He's been helping us the last couple of years. We have Cameron Willer out in Muskegon. He's got the west side of the state from, Ottawa, Kent, Muskegon counties, and all those out that way on lock. So, and then I'll pretty much go anywhere in the state where I see there's, big games, good big players. I try to see as many games as I can during the season. So, if someone's playing 7 o'clock on a Saturday night and it's in Lansing, like there's a better chance of me being there than I'm not being there. So, we really just, exert ourselves into this fully and, stretch ourselves out as much as we can to get you guys, the content that, fans want to see and provide all the, spotlight that we do on the players and communities.
So, Jeff, how do you know when an athlete makes a commitment? Are you following them on social media and then you're just kind of reposting what they post? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a little bit about that. That's always the last, thing. But a lot of times I do know kind of when a kid's committing. We talk to the kids. We talk to, we have good relationships with the coaches, the parents, trainers and whatnot, people who are involved in kids' recruiting processes. So I do know a lot of times, when a kid's going to commit ahead of time. But, our rule of thumb is we don't post a kid's commitment until he does, or, he makes his announcement on like a video or whatever the case is. So, we have a lot of respect for the players' wishes with their commitments. And I know what a big opportunity that is for them these days. And that's pretty much it though. Yeah.
Sure.
So, what do you use as your resources? So, I mean, obviously in college, you've got rosters posted to the internet and, and the pros as well. But, there's so many high schools across Michigan. You got a lot of kids on all of these high schools. How are you keeping up? Are you calling coaches? Like, how are you learning about all of these teams before the season, during the season? Or is it just, going to games and talking to people in the community and coaches?
Yeah, it's all the above pretty much. You got to have your face out in the open for people to know who you are, to know, that, okay, this Jeff guy's been around here a couple of years. I'm going to start talking to him, this next year if he doesn't talk to you the first year. So, it's really all hands on with that because we do go to games a lot. Last year I was in the hospital for the state championship, so it caused me to not see 60 games in a year, which is the first time in at least 10 plus years I did not cover 60 plus football games in the fall season. So normally I'm somewhere around 60 games. The state finals will get me at normally around 62, 63 games I cover, full games I see during the season. So I'm going to Thursday games, 4 o'clock games on Friday, the 7 o'clock game on Friday, obviously, and then as many games as I can on Saturday, depending on the schedule. So that's one of the things, obviously, is just building good relationships with coaches, them seeing you there, shaking their hand, introducing yourself, maintaining that relationship. So they always tell me the key players they have them coming back next year, sending me rosters and whatnot so I can put them on our website. But a lot of it's manual too. Like in the off season, I'm going to each one, reaching out, sending texts, sending emails, getting their rosters from last year, if they have them for this upcoming year, getting those, adding them to our website. And our website also allows players to add themselves on our site as well for free. So it's a must resource, I think, for the kids to add themselves on our website. We probably should promote it a lot more than we do, but a lot of kids do it, so we kind of don't have a lot of time to do that. But it is a very valuable resource for the kids to use our site, add their self, and just keep all their updated information constant throughout their whole time in high school.
Yeah, we'll have to put that on our social media too, that student athletes can do that.
Yeah, I'll send you guys a link, and I'll probably tweet it out today now that idea is kind of fresh in my mind.
Absolutely. And as sports guys here, we obviously love the information, but in looking at it, and talking to different general managers in college football right now, what you're doing seems like such a benefit to them because, obviously now we're not just talking about scholarships or, third-party NIL deals, but with this revenue sharing, it's a whole new world. And, with you, putting player rankings out there, promoting, the players that you see, and with your knowledge, I have to think that's a huge benefit to college coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. Colleges can only do so much in terms of who they can see during the year. So I think anytime we're able to kind of, send them some film of a player who they might not know about, a kid who maybe they didn't see who was at their camp 1 or 2 years ago who they really didn't have too much follow up with for whatever reason. That's kind of where we come into the picture, and this kind of keep all the content and data fresh on a kid. Because we do see kids pretty much every month of the year at football camps, practices, basketball games, off-season camps. 7-on-7's really big. We do that for multiple months during the year, and then there's a little period where there's dead weeks, which is the only time we really don't do too much. But we see so many kids, and it's good because that helps us, kind of feel out kids before we're able to, really mention to a coach. And then I think coaches definitely trust our judgment on a couple things that we tell about a player, how they act, how they, perform, how they move and whatnot.
Well, and you see it all too. And we had a webinar last night, and one of the things we talked about is brands for athletes, which, the way we talked about it, it's more than just, their brand that they have on social media, but, how they're acting on the field, how they're, interacting with their coaches, their parents, the other players and things like that. And I'm assuming you get to see that close up.
What? One of the best things I like to tell a kid is tell a coach is how good of a leader a kid is, so I can see, how that kid's, interacting with his teammates, how he's interacting, on the field, off the field, on the sideline, whatever it is. So, yes.
So you mentioned talking with coaches. What does that mean? So are you reaching out to coaches on behalf of players? Are they, are general managers or recruiters, DMing you about certain players? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's both. Anytime a coach reaches out to me, I'll answer his question, probably tell him a couple other things that are kind of fresh on my mind. And then, we don't really represent kids per se. Like, there's a couple kids I've helped who, they've really wanted to go on a visit. I'll get them in touch with someone. There's a few instances like that, but, it's pretty much me reaching out, telling them, hey, this kid's doing really good. This kid just accomplished this feat. This kid just ran a 4.4 at this camp, that type of stuff. So there's always a kind of open inbox between me and a lot of college coaches where, we're kind of bouncing data and just insight off of each other. And, that helps them with their recruiting process and, all the data that they're trying to get before they decide if they want to offer a kid or, move them up or down their scholarship board.
And I have to imagine you're watching so much football and basketball that when you see a high-level kid or when you see a kid that just wows you and you reach out to a coach, that really must mean something to a coach when they say, oh, Jeff's high in this guy or this girl. This is someone we need to talk to.
Absolutely. There's a lot of kids who I've, seen through the years where, I've kind of been one of the first people to mention them to a coach before they've taken off. And that's obviously a very good feeling. Seeing a kid get his first scholarship offer, seeing him eventually sign on the, his national letter of intent it was up until last year. So, that's obviously a great feeling and happy to be involved in helping the kids out with that.
Jeff, do these names and all these athletes, do they just start to blend together? Over 15 years, the amount of student athletes you must have seen is just incredible. You must have a pretty good memory.
Now, it's funny you say it like that. It's actually the faces that start to fade after a time.
Okay.
The names I don't forget, but seeing kids grow, is obviously a tremendous thing into adults. And, since I'm always seeing the kids, I kind of don't really see the the players grow into adults. So when they'll come see me after a couple years in the college weight room, I'll see them at a camp. A lot of them, I unfortunately forget their face, but it's in the back of my mind. I just, as soon as they say it, I'm like, oh yeah, obviously that's
Sure.
you. But
They need to tell you their height and weight and their stats, and then it comes back.
it's mostly just the name, to be honest with you.
Gotcha.
Who do you think the best player or best few players you've covered coming out of Michigan have been?
Donovan Peoples-Jones obviously scores the top for me. He was phenomenal in high school at Cass Tech, won the state championship his senior year. Key player since I think his freshman or sophomore year in Cass. Obviously, great career at Michigan. And NFL. He's on a roster still, so all these years later, that's obviously a great feat for him. Like that Mel Zone and Grant Perry combination was obviously very good and memorable. With those being Fracassa's last years at Brother Rice, that's always going to stand out to me. Donovan Edwards is a little more recent one who had a tremendous, way to cap off his career at West Bloomfield, winning the Division I state championship, national championship 2 years ago at Michigan, and then he's fighting for a roster spot now on the Jets. So that's obviously a very important one and a big one that's fresh in my mind right now. And then J. Rue Campbell from Cass Techs, obviously that one's going to stand out for a long time with the off-field issues he had, but just how tremendous he was those first few years of high school, winning the Division I and II state championship. The Division I state championship his freshman and sophomore years, and now Bryce Underwood's going to be up there as one of the best I've ever seen, I know for sure.
And I gotta plug you real quick. So I played on those Malzone and Grand Prairie teams at Brother Rice, and I remember you walking around, and it was always an honor to get an interview with Jeff, and then it'd be posted on social media. And I remember the guys being like, "Oh, did you get the interview?" No. So I have to give you a little shout out there.
Thank you very much. We've really grown with the interviews. It was very limited around your time, and now I've learned to try to do as many as I can, and just get you guys more exposure, get you guys more, airtime and whatnot. So that's kind of one of the things I've really gotten better at and developed these last couple of years is the interviews.
Nice.
Jeff, as the House settlement's been approved and now getting actually put into, we're seeing it in action, what, if any, changes are you seeing?
The biggest thing I've seen is limited spots for high school recruiting right now is what I've noticed with the transfer portal, with, coaches being more specific on who they're going to recruit at the Division I FBS level. So that's kind of been the biggest change I've realized that's, kind of impacting how I'm promoting kids the most, how I'm dealing with colleges the most is just, it's tougher right now than it was in the past for kids to get scholarship offers.
Yeah, I think you're right with the unrestricted transfer portal and having to compete with that out of high school. I think it's having folks like you working on their behalf is a huge thing. As far as promoting players in their best light, what advice do you have for student athletes?
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing is to know yourself. First off. Know how good of a player you are, be realistic with what type of level you think you are, and obviously shoot for as high as you can. But, you got to understand that first off, so you're not chasing around a coach like Sharon Moore, Jonathan Smith all day, trying to get him to reply to your film and whatnot. So I think that's one of the biggest things that players have to understand first off in their recruiting process. Is being realistic. And then, it's just making sure that everyone knows who you are, the best that you're able to do it without, being arrogant, being over the line in terms of like demanding that someone respects you. It's like you have to earn your respect. So, obviously that's done by what you do on the field and just the things that you can, some of the things that you can't really control sometimes, which when a college is recruiting, he's got a checklist. Okay, if this receiver isn't 6'3" to 6'4", I might not be recruiting him this year. I don't have a position for a slot, who's maybe a 5'11", 6-foot receiver. So, it's being realistic. It's making sure that you're doing the best that you can to promote yourself. Like I said, not going over top of the line, but still kind of posting things like your best plays in a highlight week 1 to week 3 film people want to see, mid-season film people want to see, and then your final season film. So those are really important things that players must do. Always having the best plays first on their film instead of, sometimes the sexiest plays, which are touchdowns, which might not necessarily be that good of a play. If it's burnt coverage and you get open or you're unblocked as a DN going in for a sack, most people can do that. So, it's just kind of always making sure your best play is at the top of your film, that college is going to look at it and say, okay, this is the type of kid that I want on my team. This is the type of things I'm looking for from a player.
So are you seeing student athletes that are, obviously they all have their dream school that they want to go to, but there may be a better situation at a mid-major where they're going to get on the field earlier, and that may, they may end up at their dream school or, another big school, that might be a stepping stone for them. Are you seeing student athletes go that route because they can get on the field earlier, and they may ultimately have greater success doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit of both, I think a lot of times, kids kind of get a little too full of themselves thinking that, maybe they have that scholarship from, like, say, Michigan State, Ohio State, whatever it is, but they might not see the field at all during their time for whatever reason. And, there's people like trainers and stuff who kind of bring coaches who bring kids down level-headed a little and say, okay, you go to this school, like, say, Hillsdale, make a mark there for 2 years, go sign with Arkansas, whatever school it is, and few years once you're more developed, and then you'll be drafted. So like, that's kind of the process that I felt like happened with Isaac Tesla from Unity Christian a few years ago at Unity Christian out in Hudsonville. So he probably could have walked on, I think, at like Central Michigan, Western Michigan, but who knows how it would have gone there. He instead went to Hillsdale for 2 years, was the GMAC Player of the Year, which is their conference instead of the GLIAC, and then he signed with Arkansas, and now he's going to be probably the third wide receiver for the Lions. So it's important that kids kind of understand that if you want to be on the field and you want to make a long-term success in football, like, you're better off being on the field a lot of times than not. So every kid's different, obviously. So that's kind of my advice. I'd tell kids, if you want to get in the field, like, this school might be better for you. So see what happens and use the transfer portal in a couple of years.
So, Jeff, my question kind of goes a little bit along with what you were just talking about, players trying to make a name for themselves and get their name out there. How do you guys cover smaller schools? For example, one of our clients is Brady Pretzloff. He's an up-and-coming linebacker at Michigan State. He's quickly climbing the depth chart now, but he's from Gaylord, Michigan. And he kind of talked about how at a smaller school like that, there's not as many connections. Coaches aren't as connected, to any college coaches or athletic directors. How do you guys go about covering, maybe an up-north school?
So we try to do it the best we can to any other kid. So, the good thing about Pretzloff was he got a lot of early interest. One of his best plays on film is a interception as a middle linebacker. Very, acrobatic play he made. That was, I think, the first play on his highlight film, that first or second. So, he got some good advice on his highlight to have that there. And,
sure.
For him, he was a player that, for Michigan State to come in that late, that was obviously good. But, to me, he was a no doubt Division I kid. But, we try to do the best we can, promote their scholarships the best as soon as we get them, building that relationship. Sometimes one of the biggest challenges with a small school who we don't see often out in, like, the northern part of the state, sometimes the Upper Peninsula, where we just don't get an opportunity much to see a lot of kids at camps or games. So, I try to build those relationships the best I can with the coaches from, like, Traverse City West, Traverse City Central, because Traverse City West might have a kid who's, Power 4 talent, but he's committed to Central Michigan this year. So we'll see how that all plays out. But, for Pretzloff and stuff, like, fortunately we were able to get up there his senior year, he played on a Saturday night versus Marquette his senior year. So we were able to see him, interview him, make a highlight on him and a couple other players at Gaylord. So, I try to tell coaches, if you've got nothing going on during the year, schedule a game on a Saturday, schedule it on a Thursday night, and, there's a better, like I said earlier, there's a better chance of us being there than not being there. So
Sure.
at the end of the day, it's just trying to build a relationship and then, see that in-person evaluation
Yeah.
for the smaller schools.
And I'm guessing for a lot of these guys, an interview with you is kind of their first interview in front of a camera. Do you have any tips on preparing for something like that or preparing for interviews as they try to get their name out there?
Yeah. So one of the kids down here went to Eisenhower. He's going to Wisconsin. He's at Wisconsin now. For his first interview, he's like, "Wow, I can't believe how good I did for my first interview." I go, "How do you prepare for it?" He said, looking back at some of your old interviews and other interviews of how kids answered questions. So that's the advice I give the younger kids now is, watch our interviews, see how kids are answering questions. And my personal advice is pretty much everything's an open-end question. You don't need to say yes or no, to every question. If you have to say yes, expand on it for the interview, and you'll feel much better about how the interview is done, once it's, finalized and whatnot.
Jeff, before we came on today, we were talking about Sammy Ide, who will be at Brother Rice now, and looking forward to watching him play. I'm sure Lansing Catholic would love to have him behind center this year, but he makes the move down there. Do you think we're going to see more of that with high school players in this new era of revenue sharing, where they may be looking at, when you're competing not just with other high school players, but players out of the transfer portal? Do you think we're going to see high school players making moves to maybe the higher level play for that film?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of happened the last couple of years. Like the one you just mentioned, Sammy obviously is one, but there's a couple others who've gone to, say, like St. Mary's and stuff from the Lansing area. So, unfortunately for the schools that lose kids, that are smaller enrollment, play smaller enrolled schools, like that's kind of been the case, but it's going to be happening, I think, a little more with, the reasons you list out with the NIL stuff, and just the recruiting process is going to be tougher. I think a lot of people know, and if they don't know, they assume that coaches do kind of flock to the Metro Detroit area more in the high enrolled schools. So, that's unfortunately just kind of how it is with, Michigan only having one major city, and that being Detroit.
What is the most highly recruited school in the state of Michigan, if you know?
It's Cass Tech.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. They got, I think it's 20 kids who've been drafted into the NFL. I know it's countless, well into the hundreds scholarships of, kids who signed to a college out of Cass Tech. So I know like Cass is up there. King is slightly behind, but not much. And then the private schools like Brother Rice, Catholic Central, Orchard Lake. And then schools like West Bloomfield have really tuned it up lately with the success they've had.
Belleville in the last couple of years.
Belleville the last couple of years, River Rouge the last couple of years.
Yep.
And then there's just always ones that are consistently producing kids at least once a year. Somewhere like Dakota, Sterling Heights, Stevenson. Like De La Salle was a private school one. I didn't mention them, obviously. All those type of schools in Metro Detroit, and that play in like the MAC Red, Lake Oregon, the OAA Red. Southfield lost their coach to Brother Rice, but I'm sure they'll, kind of get back to that swing of every couple of years there'll be a kid out of Southfield with a D1 offer, because Southfield historically has been a strong program sending kids to college despite all the success Brother Rice have had and St. Mary's have had, like coincidentally during the amount of time during when they were sending kids to sending kids to colleges. So Southfield will be one too.
Yep.
Jeff, what about the west side of the state? I'm from Grand Rapids, so I'm just curious what schools over there you're seeing a lot of athletes come out of.
Yeah. So Muskegon's, the winningest program in the state. They've had countless kids come out of there. Khalil Pimpleton right now on the Ottawa Red Blacks in the Canadian Football League. Ricardo Kitchen right now, class of 2027, DN, outside linebacker, tight end. He's got somewhere around 20 to 30 scholarship offers, top 50 ranked in the country. So Muskegon's always going to be one. Mona Shores, which is their rival. They're constantly having kids. They have a Miami commit right now. East Kentwood got Tyrone Spencer out of King as their head coach 2 years ago, so they've really turned up the pressure on a lot of West Michigan teams, I know. And then schools like Hudsonville, Rockford,
Lowell,
Granville, Jenison, they've got tons of kids in the school, so they're always, getting kids going to D1 schools, D2 schools.
Probably Forest Hills too, right?
Forest Hills has a Forest Hills Central has a Central Michigan commit this year, yeah.
And I think East Kentwood had, is it Cade Kaufman, Michigan State?
Kaufman, yeah, he's committed to Michigan State.
Yeah.
It's funny about him. He started off as the backup quarterback at South Christian, and I think he was going to be the backup this past year. But when Spencer went to Kentwood, he also went at the same time. So, it's kind of been a funny relationship between those two, from Spencer moving from King to East Kentwood and Kaufman moving from South Christian to East Kentwood at the same time. And, it should be a very good year for East Kentwood this year.
Nice.
So with the Michigan high school football season starting up next week, we want to get your expert picks and players to watch before we start the season. So let's start with teams to watch. Who's your top 10 if you have that?
Yeah, I do. So we released that last week. Cass Tech's our number one team in the state. Started off the preseason. They came off with a Division I state championship last year. They lost a couple guys. One of our player of the year. We did a co-op player of the year last year for the first time. CJ Sadler and Alex Graham. Graham's going to USC this year. So they'll be without him, but they'll be just fine with CJ Sadler. Donald Taberon returns as their sophomore quarterback. KJ Canty is their left tackle who's committed to Missouri. So they'll be really good. They got, again, close to 10 D1 kids on that team who are seniors, so they're going to be really good. And then St. Mary's, Catholic Central, Saline, and Hudsonville are the rest of our top five. St. Mary's and Cass was kind of a toss-up between 1 and 2 with how much St. Mary's returns, but Cass Tech, to me, is just a little bit better. And then from 6 to 10 is De La Salle, King, Clarkston, Belleville, and Dakota.
Do you see Brother Rice having a better year this year? I know we struggled the last couple of years.
Yeah. They'll be much improved this year. They're not a top 25 team to start off the year, but I could realistically see them making a move possibly into the top 25. What's going to have to happen is for them to beat, a team above them. So say St. Mary's, Catholic Central, De La Salle, if they get a win like that, you'll see a major improvement from them in terms of their ranking and stuff. But my thought is, most of that team was freshmen last year. They're all better this year. And, they're going to start competing with a lot these teams that were kind of beating them pretty handily last year. And with a new coach in his second year, Aaron Marshall, they should be much better. The biggest challenge they got, obviously, is all the teams above them. I listed off St. Mary's, Catholic Central, and De La Salle as number 2 ranked team, number 3 ranked team, number 6 ranked team. And then the Catholic League also has Toledo Central Catholic, who's I don't see the rankings in Ohio, but I got to imagine they're a top 10 team with the number 1 cornerback in the Midwest, Victor Singleton, who's going to Texas A&M, and then a returning quarterback and a tight end who's going to Notre Dame, Preston Frizel. So there's no cakewalks in the Catholic League this year, not that there ever was, but this year should be really strong.
Jeff, I would wager to say you know more about Michigan high school football than anyone in the country. Is that a fair statement?
I think in regards to the Midwest, yeah. I mean, Ellen True from 247 is probably up there. He is up there with me, but obviously Michigan is, where I strive to have that reputation the most. So I'll definitely say I'm number 1 for Michigan. But I do follow everything else that goes outside of the state. Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, obviously. We're starting to try getting these teams in our events to play, 7-on-7. So if I can get a team like Whitmer and Toledo to play Cass Tech, that's only better for all the teams involved. If I can get Cass to play Moeller, that's better for all the teams involved for their offseason 7-on-7 than them not playing. So I have really kept an eye out on what's going on in Ohio. Started building some relationships there. I'm going down on this Friday to see Wapakoneka play Clay, Ohio. Both teams have Division I kids, so it's just expanding my perspective, expanding my relationships, and all this at the end of the day only helps what we have going on here in Michigan.
What about players to watch this year?
Yeah, so CJ Sadler's the top player to watch in Michigan this year. He's committed to North Carolina. Bill Belichick, as everyone knows, the head coach there. So, he's, to me, the best player in Michigan. He's been starting since he was a freshman. He started off kind of going between wide receiver and quarterback before he settled into a receiver, and he's played corner and safety his whole time in high school. So, he's the most explosive player to watch in Michigan this year. He's the player who's, plays on the #1 team in the state, the most recognizable team from Michigan, Cass Tech. So he's got that solidly locked down, I think. Lincoln Keys from Saline's the next player to me, the tight end. He's committed to Georgia. He's a phenomenal receiver, tight end who can, stretch the field out wide, block at the traditional tight end spot, line up an H-back, do whatever you need from him. He's phenomenal. And then there's a bunch of good old line that I'm kind of just I shouldn't really list them all together, but like Greg Patrick from Portage Northern, he's outstanding. He's going to Notre Dame. What's the other one? I can't think of his name. He's from Davison. Tommy Carr from Saline, their quarterback. CJ Carr's brother, he's phenomenal. CJ just got the starting job at Notre Dame last year. Yesterday, sorry. So Tommy Carr is outstanding. He's kind of sat behind CJ on the sideline, but now that he took over last year, he was outstanding, and he'll do better this year. And the O-line I was thinking of is Ben Nichols from Davison. He's been a 4-year starter for Davison. He's really good, committed to Notre Dame. And then Samson Gash from Novi Catholic Central is really good. He was one of the key reasons they reached the semifinals last year, and I expect an even better year from him. And then in the class of 2027, I mentioned Ricardo Kitchen-Ready from Muskegon. He's one of the top 50 players in the country, and ranked higher than him is Dakota Garant from Harper Woods, who's going to have an outstanding junior year this year. Him and the QB Nate Rushlow has been playing the last 3 years together, so I'm expecting a big year from him at Harper Woods and Harper Woods in general after they won the D4 state championship 2 years ago.
Jeff, what's your plug for the D Zone? I saw you had a couple subscription options on your website. How can people best utilize the D Zone?
Yeah, so we have like I said earlier in the call, we got a free. We allow players to add themselves for free on our website. They just go to our players tab, click add player, and then they're able to add themselves, add their name, add their height, weight, their grades, and all that. Their roster, their jersey number, if it's varsity, JV, whatever it is, freshman. And then we have a $100 a year player premium package, which allows the kids to, have that profile boosted even further. It's better visibility on our website. They're able to go on our website, add their visits, add their film, and it goes out automatically under our social media. So, it's really a good way for players to control, what goes out on our platform of them. They're able to add more descriptions on their posts. So if they got 10 catches for 120 yards, they're able to add that right on our website, and it goes out to our full social media audience. So it's definitely very helpful for players to sign up for that, and we'll be able to answer any questions that any players' parents have by just DMing us or send us an email at michiganfootball@thedzone.com.
Would you recommend someone, let's say you got a freshman who might be on varsity or JV, and they have hopes of playing at the next level? Would you recommend they reach out to you all early in the process? They might not, they might have some room to develop, but do you recommend starting that process early with you all?
Yeah, players and parents should definitely reach out to us as soon as they know that they're going to start sniffing varsity playing time for, just so we know who they are is the biggest thing. First off, if they don't play it, if you're not starting at, like, say, Cass Tech, and we don't see you week one, like, there's a chance we might not know you started week one. So players should always, message us right away with wherever they're at in their whole high school process. The younger, the better, obviously. Like, I don't get too involved with kids in 7th grade, younger than 7th and 8th grade, really. Like, I'd like to see how they perform on the varsity level before I personally have my, evaluation on a kid, and before I start telling coaches about a kid until I see him on varsities. But players should always do that. And it's good for us, and it's good for college coaches to know when you start reaching out to us that, okay, this kid, started off at 5'9", now he's 6'1". He's done this better from when he sent us his first video. So it's just seeing a kid's growth and all that's really helpful to us. So yeah, players and parents should definitely reach out to us as soon as they know their kids, aspiring to play college, and when he gets that, starts sniffing around with varsity playing time.
So is that where you're going to be week one, is Cass Tech?
Yeah, so I hate to tell kids all the time, but I mean, the prep kickoff classic at Wayne State has 2 games on Thursday, 2 games on Friday, so it's impossible not to have me be there.
So are you going to be out to? I've got to make a plug for Hazlitt. Are you going to be out to watch Hazlitt and watch Corrion play this year?
Definitely trying to. Yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. I know I normally don't decide what game I go to until the week of a game. So I know Hazlitt should be really good this year, and we'll see what happens. Definitely going to be trying to, though.
Jeff, do you have any time to go to any college games during the season, or are you too busy with high school?
So that's been one of my biggest thoughts for expansion, is how I can get into covering more college games. So I think this year I'm going to be trying to get more into seeing the D2 kids, is where I'm going to be starting off with, because a lot of them are starting to go from D2 to D1. I think there was 9 or 10 kids this year from Grand Valley, Saginaw, and Ferris who went from D2 to D1 FBS. So that's definitely what we're going to be trying to do on free time, is sneaking in to see Ferris, Grand Valley, Saginaw, Wayne State, Northwood, and we'll see who else is starting to break out. I don't know if there's any Isaac Teslaws coming out at these smaller schools at Davenport and Hillsdale, but
you'll be the first to find them.
Yeah,
we'll be the first. And a kid like Tesla, for example, I followed him, what he was doing the whole time. So there's kids like that I do know in D2 who I am following right now. Maybe I'm not posting about them and saying their name, but I do have lists. I do have follow-ups. I do with seeing where a kid where he's at in college. So I'll be trying to. Well, that's the biggest challenge, though, is time.
We're going to take this podcast on the road on September 6th for the Boston College-Michigan State game, and we'd love to have you out there. So if you're going to be around in East Lansing, we'd love to hear about your week one thoughts and talk to you for a little bit if you're going to be around.
Got a tailgate spot all set up and everything.
Yeah, we're set to go, so we'd love to have you.
Nice. I'll have to see how that high school this is also the biggest challenge with college games, is covering high school games on Saturday, so I'll have to see how it all plays out, and we'll definitely be in touch, and we'll see what we can do about that.
Sounds good. Well, we really appreciate you coming on. You have so much knowledge, and in this ever-changing landscape of recruiting for high school kids into this new world of college sports, you certainly are a great resource. So we look forward to continue to talk to you and hopefully have you on again. And obviously we're talking about some other potential things we're going to do together. So anyway, thanks again for coming on, and look forward to talking to you again.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Appreciate it, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.